Hello, welcome to the Flickering Torch. On today's episode, we're reviewing Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands is an RPG by Swedish company Free League. It evokes the old school aesthetics of early D&D fantasy art, along with the deadly gritty worlds of sword and sorcery fiction. In the game, players aren't necessarily the good guys, but they're the rogues and raiders who've come to this cursed land that's been cut off from the world to try and eke out their own fortune and fame. The first and most striking thing I think about this RPG is just the aesthetic design. Each of the handbooks is like faux leather bound with a clear symbol of one of the deities in the world. They're actually both opposing Bible. They're all printed on this really nice heavyweight paper with beautiful old school maps and wonderful old school fantasy art that really give it a very evocative feeling. Now, I do like art in books like the 5th edition Player's Handbook, and I love the new Vampire the Masquerade rulebook, but honestly, aesthetic-wise, I think this RPG nails the theme and the tone by showing that this is very much an old-school RPG. The product itself, Forbidden Lands is a box set, so you get that GM guide, you get that player's guide, but you also get a wonderful full-colour map and stickers, so you can basically play this like almost like a legacy board game, putting the stickers on and tracking your entire playthrough through the Forbidden Lands. I think the aesthetic and tone and feel of the game really complement the old-school, brutal combat and almost Conan-esque tones of the book. In this setting, magic is incredibly powerful, but it's also very, very dangerous, and a lot of the rules in the book seem to hone in on this idea that you're a regular person in this sort of mud and blood setting, trying to eke out your own fortune. A really cool thing that kind of helps with this tone and theme is the backstory of the Ravenlands, this entire land that has been entirely isolated by a magical force called the Blood Mist. It's a really cool plot element because the Blood Mist has only just cleared up, and now our heroes, or just our characters, are trying to go to the Ravenland to earn their profit, or maybe they were forced there over this iron lock, which kind of functions kind of like the wall in Game of Thrones, but they send prisoners over the side. And what really helps sell this tone and feel are the mechanics. You don't have a different pool for health and strength and dexterity. You basically have all of your attributes be their own, essentially, hit point bars. So as you're fighting, you're getting weaker, you're feeling the kind of drain that physical exertion and combat and constantly looking out for your survival is causing on your character. Fights are very, very deadly in this game, and often end with both combatants very much worse for wear. So how this makes sense in the game is when you go to roll an ability check, you make a dice pool of d6s with your attribute, plus your skill, plus your gear, but all of these have to be different colours. Now, this might seem odd to start with, but them all being different colours allows this really nice narrative element of figuring out exactly why you failed or exactly why you succeeded at a task. So if only your gear dice succeeded, then your trusty axe came through for you in the end. But there's also this mechanic called pushing your roll, so after you fail or succeed at a roll, you can ask the GM to push it, physically exerting yourself more than the original roll. So in the original roll, any 6s were successes and no other rolls mattered. But if you decide to push your roll, any of those 6s you rolled stayed, but also the 1s if they were in the attribute colour and 1s if they were in the gear colour. This is to show that you're physically exerting yourself and you've actually injured yourself if you get any 1s in the attributes, or you're damaging your gear if you get any 1s in the gear. And this allows Forbidden Lands to have a gear degradation mechanic without it being something else that you have to track. Like, you could never engage with this mechanic, and then stuff like your gear degrading would never happen, and then you wouldn't have to track that. But if you want to engage with this risk-reward mechanic, you might not only succeed, but any damage you take due to pushing your roll, you get back as willpower, which is the kind of mana system for the game, and it lets you do some really cool abilities, especially if you're a spellcaster. Then you can cast these wildly powerful spells. But every time you cast a spell, you might be rolling on a magic mishap table that can go as bad as your character is literally ripped from this dimension and gets thrown back into the Ravenlands weeks later, stumbling across your party irrevocably changed. Now, you might not be playing as the character when this happens, so it basically allows the DM to take that player character and turn them into either a helpful or a hurtful NPC, and allows you to sort of play off this idea that the Bravenlands are very, very dangerous and magic is incredibly dangerous. I really, really adore the way they've done resource management in this game. Especially for player characters, not so much when we get to Strongholds, but I'll get into that in my negatives. Resource management in this game involves you rolling resource dice. So you have food in your pack, but you don't have, say, 5 meals. You have a D12 of meals. So every time you take that meal, you roll the D12, and if it's a 1 or a 2, you get stepped down a dice, so you go to a D10. And every time you roll a 1 and a 2 on every dice, you get stepped down until you're on 6, and then you run out. And you might be thinking, oh, this is a weird, abstract way of doing food. But really, it plays into the survival mechanics, because you never really know how much food you've got left. It might run out in the next day, it might not run out for days. And as a DM, you can sort of model this as, oh, maybe rats got into your food, or maybe because of you physically exerting yourself, you've eaten more food than you commonly would. And this is a really beautiful mechanic, because it allows you to basically say, I don't want to do any bookkeeping on how many torches, how many arrows, how many whatever. I'll just roll the dice every time I use it. And I think this is like a beautiful mechanic, especially in a game that wants you to go out hunting and go out finding for water. Because usually what player characters would do in a traditional role-playing game is go by, like, the journey plus a day, so they know that they're never going to run out of food or water. Whereas in this, because you don't know, you can't plan that far ahead, and then you can always have these interesting situations where maybe the player characters are out of food and they have to go raid that raider's camp to go get their food, or maybe we have a hunting adventure and suddenly you stumble across a big, like, grey bear that's going to attack the party. And I think this resource system is beautifully narrative and allows you to take out a lot of the bookkeeping. I also want to take a minute to talk about the character generation system. Now, in the player's handbook, it does have the traditional sort of add your stats, build your character from the ground up thing. But because this game's a box set, it also comes with Legends and Adventures, which is a small little pamphlet that will allow you to generate a character using a life path character generator, so your character will instantly fit in with the plot and the story. I do have some cons. For me, the GM's guide is front-loaded with a lot of history, and I can see how that could play into a story later on, but for me it was just a lot of fluff with no real substance to it. I can totally get how people would love it, but for me it was just too much front-loading of history. The Stronghold system is really awesome. You as a characters can build up a base of operations and add like fortifications and like basically like becomes kind of like a little base management thing. However, unlike the resource system for each player character, the resource system for the Strongholds is really bookkeeping heavy, and I would have liked them to go in a different direction with it. I understand why it's there, and I understand that some players will relish this kind of city builder, base builder aspect, but for me it was just a little bit too heavy on the bookkeeping and isn't something you could do in session. You have to do that out of session. I also have a minor gripe that I can't seem to find the player's handbook as a separate purchase, and as we all know, if you're sat around a table with 6 players, you kind of need the 2 handbooks so you can give one to the players and keep one behind the GM screen. Obviously this isn't a problem with the RPG, this is me wanting, I would argue, more out of it. So if that becomes available, I think it would be a must-buy to really play this game, because, again, I like keeping a copy behind the screen so I can check rules, and I like the players to be able to check rules in between their turns. There's 2 combat systems in the game, one that uses the regular ability checks and one that uses these combat cards. I think this second combat cards one is kind of superfluous and we don't really need it. And it also takes away from one of the professions that uses this second combat system in a bunch of cool ways, but no one I don't think is ever going to try and use that combat system. So to conclude, Forbidden Lands for a value proposition is amazing. You get so much in that little box. You get that legacy map, you get the 2 beautiful faux leather-bound books. You get a really cool system that emphasizes the sort of gritty, bloody nature of the setting. You get wonderful, wonderful old-school fantasy art and a really evocative theme. So I would highly, highly recommend you go out and pick up Forbidden Lands, especially at the price it is on the Modiphius website. Thank you all for watching The Flickering Torch. I'm going to try and get more videos out to you. I know the next video is going to be another GM panel with Sean Connors. Please like and subscribe, leave me a comment saying what you enjoyed about this review, what elements you think could improve in future reviews, and I'll see you next time on The Flickering Torch.